So let's start. I think it's already 1 o'clock naman. So welcome again to another discussion for PHP programming. So this is your subject, Systems Integration and Architecture 1. So for this day, we will be talking about PHP functions. But before that, let's try to understand first, what's the purpose of PHP functions or functions itself? Okay, so when you are doing your codes or when you code, 'di ba? There will be some features na you do it repeatedly. Like kana bitaw na uban features like for example, you would want to connect your system to the database or there is a particular form na wherein or a page na you would want this form to be connected to your database and then hinay daw ko na akong mic. Okay, wait sa ha. Let's try to ano sa muna. Raymark is ano. How about the others? Hinay ba gyapon sa uban? I am already ano naman, mura ako nagipadula kung tingog danig yun. Could anyone confirm na hinay ba gyud? Sige daw be. I think I can ask. Wait lang. Hinay gyapon. How about the others? How about the others? Hinay gyapon? Okay raman daw. Maybe it's because of the connection siguro. Okay? So, katong mga hinay din ha. Ato lang kusga ng atong ano na lang siguro. Wait ade. I will try to adjust to my microphone. Pero so far, my microphone, it's saying here nga my pickup is okay man. Okay, maybe it's because of ano, because of the signal. Okay? So let's go back. Okay, so let's go back. Functions, don't worry because every after my talk, I will ask Bansad if madunggan bagid ko dili. Okay. So when you say functions gali, it means na 'di ba when you develop or when you write a program, there are some parts of the program that you would want to be used or utilized in other parts also. 'Di ba? Like gusto nimo siya gamiton balik sa lahi pod nga ano nga same purpose but then on another nga part silbi. So what you do is that usually if it's you can do it manually, like pwede nimo siya balikon pag code or you can just create a function and then call it whenever you would want to call it, okay? So for example, I am creating a form that kana siya nga function is ako po nang gamiton pud gyapon ako gyapon sa lahi pod nga system or sa lahi nga part sa system. So instead of doing it all over again, I will just use na lang a function. Diba? So munang purpose sa function like it would benefit the programmer or developer with regards sa kung saan yung word. Please type this word if you have understood. Sige. Na ako i-highlight nga word. Could you please type that one in your in-call messages? Hello? Ayun. So Kent got it. How about the others? Cheryl got it also. Okay, very good, very good. How about the others? I only received 3 Mandanio, 4 DI, 5. How about the others? Okay. So ayun. So munang kumbaga general purpose ni function. Instead nga balik-balikon nimo paghimo utro ang katong part sa imong system nimo, just utilize it na lang dayon as it is, di ba? So let's start discussing about PHP functions. So the real power of PHP comes from its functions because you have it here. There is already 1,000 built-in functions na create na ni PHP and you can even create your own. So this 1,000 functions are usually used, like for example, functions for calendar, functions for mathematics, functions for mail plugins, kana PHP has already done creating those functions. Ang buhato na lang dayon is you will integrate it in your system. Okay? So by definition, a function it is possible to create your own functions. So provided, 'di ba? You have it here now. Ingon man sa dani nga functions daw or you can create your own functions provided that your function should be a block of statement that can be used repeatedly in a program. Meaning, aside sa you only create functions. Again, create only a function if you will do it repeatedly in your program. Like for example, nag-create ka og function para mag-display sa name, pero kana siya nga purpose is kas ara man na mabuhat. So you don't need to do it or write a function for it, 'di ba? So if there is a particular feature in your program that is repeatedly done, that's the time you can create a function. And then you also create a function, but remember, it will not execute automatically when the page loads. Meaning, it's user input dependent. Meaning, aya ra siya ma-trigger, aya ra siya mogana, or the function will be executed only if there is a part, or if the argument that is being presented within the parameter is satisfied by the input coming from the end user. So later on, we will talk about parameters and arguments. The last one, a function should be executed by a call to the function. Ibig sabihin, when you would want to use a function, what you will do is that just call the name of the function. Okay? Sige daw, be. If you have understood it, please type in your meeting chat this word. Kanang na-highlight na ako. Sige daw. If you have questions regarding how to the basics of functions, please turn on your microphone or you can just type it in the meeting chat. Okay? So those are the things that we need to remember when we would want to write a function. Kinakailangan it should be repeatedly used in the program. It should be it will be end user input dependent or argument dependent, and of course it should be called or it should be utilized by calling the name of the function. Okay, so just like any other parts in PHP programming, a PHP function has also a syntax. When you say syntax, gali, it means the format on how you create one. Okay, so you start creating your function by typing or starting it with the word function. It would the word function will indicate na this program or a part of the program is trying to create a function. So after the word function, you write the function name, and in between this one will be the codes to be executed. Usually it could either be a mathematical process or a simple echo message or a display message, diba? And kanibito sandani, this one is what we call the parameters for the argument. So inside of this one, dito natin ilalagay kung ano yung mga, 'di ba? On the second definition of function, ang sabi niya, function will not be automatically loaded in your page, but rather it will be triggered by an input from the user, okay? Or from a value from a user, or a value that will satisfy the argument in the function. So dani ni siya, okay? Dani siya nabutang. So muna siya ang iyang syntax, mupod ni siya ang iyang format kung saan ni mo mag-write kag functions. Now, for example, kani siya. So you have it here an example. This one is a PHP function that writes a message with the message na hello world. So let us remember sinagali yung sa function name daw, we have here a note dani. This one should be remembered always. A function name must start with a letter or underscore. Function names are not case sensitive. Okay. So when you write the function name, it should start with a letter, not a number. Pwede daw kung underscore, but then in practice, what we usually do is that we what do you call this one? We write, or the naming notation of the function would always start with a letter mangyod or a word, diba? And then functions are not case sensitive. So for example, you've written your function in a manner nga naka uppercase tanan, and then when you call it, like imo siyang tawagon is naka lowercase siya, it will still run. Okay? Now, with another concern also in naming notation is that when you try to write a function, or when you name a function, make sure the name is relevant to the name is relevant to the purpose of the function. So for example, you will name the function addition. So it tells us, or for those who will be reading your code, especially if wala kay PHP comment na gibutang, would expect na this function is for adding two numbers because you named it as addition. So, pero ang purpose man nila tumanday kay igor kwaon ang pangalan. So, name your functions correctly or with relevance. Okay? Kaya kung di na siya tarungon pagtawag or pag name silbi, maglisod na pud ka na og tawag. Especially if you have a lot of functions to manage. Okay? So Danny, we have it here. We have written, di ba, naman kaganina, when you write a function, you start first with the word function, and then the second one will be the function name na dayon, and then the parameter and the argument dayon. So this only means nga this function, ang iyang name is write MSG or write message, and then every time nga tawagon siya, kaning hello world ang mutunga. Okay? So let's try it. I'll share the window na lang para dili ta maglisod. Okay. Could you please confirm if makita ba or maklaro ba ang akong gi-share? Could anyone
Yes,
confirm?
sir.
Very good. Thank you. So if I will click this one, so again, I will recommend what they call this one. I will recommend you using W3 schools. You can use it. Okay. So look at this one. Dani iyang mo diba maning time or maning part wherein nag-create siya function. Dani nga part is iyang pagtawag. So pagtawag niya, automatic ang gitunga si hello world. Ngano man because ang sulod sa write message na function is kaniman siya hello world. Okay? So that's another thing to remember. So for example, so what if lugar sa kung dugangan na kung isa lugar ka write message. So kung imo nang dugangan, of course, maduwa pud na siya. Okay? So again, if you will use W3 schools, dapat naka-internet para mugana pud yung compiler niya. Diba? Diwa na ka hello world. So kung imo ni butangan sa BR dani or break line, let's try. Ayan o, diba? Diwa lang ko hello world silbi. Okay? So that's the format on how to write a function. So this is an example function. Make sure lang yun nga the codes to be executed is enclosed in a curly braces. Okay? And then make sure also na when you call for the function, napod siya, kanina niyo, open and close parenthesis, matawag na siguro. And then, a semicolon. Okay? Muna usually and kasagara. Problema, every time mag-check ko sa kanabitong exam sa functions, agkalimtan ng curly braces, agkalimtan po ni Pudyapon, especially if it's written, di ba? So questions regarding that one. Sige daw. Before I proceed with the next one. Okay. So kung walang question, please type the highlighted word. Sige daw, Ben. The highlighted word is this one. Please type it in your meeting chat for me to confirm that you are still listening. I highlighted a word. Very good. You have Garcia, you have Anghag, Avila. Ayun. Raymark has a question. Raymark, what's your question? You are raising your hand. Tuplukan na to. Raymark, are you raising your hand or natuplukan na to nimo?
Natuplukan sir, mag-comment ako.
Okay. So ayan, very good. So let's now go to PHP function arguments. So function arguments are specified after the function name and then inside the parenthesis. You can add as many as arguments as you want for as long as you separate them with a comma. Ayan na, diba? You can write as many arguments as you would want and then you just need to separate it with a comma. So an argument is like a variable, okay? Ang argument daw is like a variable. And then usually, ang variable or ang value sa variable is given by the user. So you have here an example. So this is, kani siya, kipan ako gamaya para maklaro na to. Okay. So this is an example of a function wherein ang iyang family name, kani siya, this is the name of the function and then this part here is the argument. So ang but pasabot dani is that this function will only, what they call this one, not only, this function will work or will be implemented in the program provided nga na ay value nga ihatag base argument. Okay? So for example na ay value gihatag si user, ang kaning value will be catched by this variable, and then it will be used inside dani sa function. Okay? If you notice, nagamit ang value ni fname sa pagpa-display sa pangalan. Okay? And then on the next parts, you have it here, muna siya ang katugaling gipang tawag silbi. What you call this one? You have, gitawag niya ang functions, but then, okay, again gitawag niya ang functions, but then they have different arguments. Okay, if we will try this one, I should share the window there, sorry, not the tab. Okay. So, pag ako ni siyang tuplo ko ng try it yourself, ang mutunga din is kani siya. Sorry. Kani siya. So, you have it here. Diba, I created one function, and then if you notice, ang function is gitawag siya many times, but then with different arguments. So, kani bitong gipang sulat din nga value sa arguments, muna siya ang may mong value dayon daning variable na fname. Munang giingon kagay na bitaw nga functions will not be loaded automatically not unless na ay ihatag nga input for the argument. So dani nga scenario na ay man siya gihatag na input for argument. So it means nga pag tawagon siya, di ba? Pag tawagon siya, tawagon siya, ipakita niya ang what they call this one, the output of the function or ang process sa function provided nga na ni argument. So munang ang gitungan nila ni dayon, Johnny, so si Johnny ang butang Danny, and then sumpay din niya din is the last name of Refsness. Johnny Refsness, Hedgie, Stale, Kai, and then Borge. So let's try kung wala siya value. Look what will happen kung wala siya value. Okay. Okay. If you notice, dili siya mo gana. Okay? Ano man? Because, di ba, we have declared man nga dapat naagyoy argument or value argument nga dapat ibutang sa dani nga parameter, di ba? Ang problema lang dani is that sir, pero ang uban sir kay naa may value sa argument. Remember, PHP is a procedural programming baya. So it means nga if dili siya mo gana dani, it means nga di siya mo padayon. Diba? So it means that there's something wrong with the way you call the function. Okay? Now, let's go to the next one. Ay, wait, question sa una. Kasi may question dani. So again, this is what you call function arguments. Question muna before I proceed with the next one. Hello? So kung walang question, please write down this one daw din in your meeting chat. Kaning word, kanang gi-highlight. Nga. Okay, very good. Okay, now let's proceed with the next one. Diba, accordingly, I mentioned a while ago na you can either write two or more arguments in a function. Diba? So for example, kani siya. If you notice, we and the argument for the year variable. So meaning, kinahanglan kung tawagon nimo ang function, duha pud ka buok ka specific value for argument ay imong i-declare. So for example, kani siya, gitawag na ako si family name, ayan. Yan. Ang butong nga is kani siya. Ay, sorry, natapon na ako ang run. So if I will compile this PHP script, ang butong nga dayon is si, diba, Hedgie, and then 1975. So nganong kani siya man ang gitunga man sir because based on our function, kwaon niya ang first argument and then pataban ang last name nga si Refsness, and then the word born in year and then kwaon niya ang second argument which is ang year. Okay? So muna siya. Any other question regarding katugaling two or more arguments? You can raise your hand or you can what do you call this one? You can turn on your microphone. Okay? So another thing that you need to remember also is that naapoy kuan si PHP pod gyapon. You have it here. PHP is a loosely typed language, meaning you have it here. In the example above, notice that we did not have to tell PHP which data type is a variable, and then which data type variable is a integer or a string. Diba? This one is not actually an integer but a date silbi. But we did not declare na kay automatically man, diba, based on our discussion sa PHP data types. PHP has the capability to identify the type of variable based on the value provided for that particular variable. So kung ang imong gihatag dani nga value sa year is in year, automatically basahon na siya ni PHP as PHP dates. Dani kani siya kay string man, di ba? So automatically pagyapon gi-consider na ni PHP na kana siya, okay, this variable is after for the string. Okay? Now, PHP is a loosely typed language. It means nga since the data types are not set into a strict sense, you can do things like adding a string to an integer without causing an error. Kani siya nga scenario is actually not a good practice in programming. Ano man, let me give you an example. For example, you will add one apple, 'di ba? For example, you will add the number 2 and then kinahanglan dapat number siya, 'di ba? Pero ang na-input ni user kay apple. So, how will you add a number to a string? So, basag may mong algebra expressions, silbi, di ba? So, to answer that one, the latest version of PHP provided this strict declaration. Okay? This strict declaration will throw a fatal error if the data types are mismatched. Meaning, if, for example, the function requires integer, but then the value provided by the end user is a string, it will then produce a fatal error. Okay? So we have here an example. Kani siya. If you notice, di ba, this one is a function that adds to number. So dani explicitly the user defined this function nga the first argument should be in integer. The second argument should also be in an integer, and then the two values provided by the user will be added, and then a particular value will be returned as a value for this function. Muning na ay return din nga part. Okay. So ang gibuhat karon sa user is that, okay, tawagon na ako si add number. Diba? I will call add numbers, but then I will provide the first argument with an integer, but then the second argument with a string. Diba? So basically, kung ato ning tan-awon sa normal nga scenario sa mathematics, this should be an error. Okay? Karon, pag imo ning tanaw ginyo gali ha, look what will happen. Muning kanitong loophole, mao ni siya ang loophole ni PHP sa iyang mga previous version niya. So kung ako ni siyang what do you call this one? Sorry. Sa pa kung na-share na ako. So if I will try to run this one gali, ang may tabo is inani dayon. So ang mutunga nga value is 10, di ba? Di ba dapat error man ni siya? Kay how can you add 5 and then 5 days? Nga di ba sila same silbi? This one is a number, this one is a string or character, di ba? So the loophole now in actually people call it advanced, but then ang correct na term ang is a loophole. Kaya ang gibuhat din ni PHP is that since nabantayan man niya nga naay particular numeric value inside the string. So ang gibuhat niya, gikuha niya si 5, iyang gidawat. Gidawat po niya pod si 5. Okay? Nakakita man siya 5 dani, di ba? Nakakita siya 5. So meaning 5 plus 5 is equivalent to 10. But then this one is wrong man gid siya mangyud. Di ba? So to answer that one, ang gibuhat dayon ni PHP is that naghatag siya strict declaration block. Okay? The strict declaration block will help or will aid in providing mismatch values sa PHP programming. So, by putting this statement here, kani bitong declare strict types, kani siya, by putting this one in your PHP script, automatically, it will throw an error dayon. So let's do it again. Okay? So ato ni siyang kopyahon and then let's try to put this one dito sa katugaling atong gipakita nga example kaganina. Okay? Ayan. Ingon man siya, you put it daw kuno before sa ano daw, before daw kuno sa PHP line, before daw kuno mag-create kag function. So if you notice kanina, okay pa to siya. Dani, dapat na siya error. So, ayan. Fatal error, uncaught error, argument 2, pass to blah, 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 blah. So, kani siya in context, ang pasabot niya Dani is, dili siya pwede mabuhat or dili siya pwede tawagon kani siya nga function. It's because ang value sa argument na imong gibutang is not correct or does not match the data type set by the function. Ano man, ang giingon sa function, paghatag lang sa integer for variable A o another integer for variable B. Okay? So, how did that happen man? Or nganong na may error, Dani? It's because of this line. Okay? Questions? Sige daw, be? Question daw muna din before I proceed with the next one. Sige daw, question. So, di ba, it's quite simple because you have already undergone this one in your previous programming classes, di ba? Ang ano lang yun ni PHP programming is that PHP programming is quite flexible, quite dynamic na sometimes their advantage bitaw of flexibility becomes a loophole na dayon. Pero eventually man sad, they provide versions that will answer the loopholes. So you don't need to worry. Okay? So kung walay question, please type this highlighted word in your in-call messages for me to confirm nga, sir, putol-putol daw ko. How about the others? I think it's because of your signal. Ayun. So if putol-putol man galing, don't worry because this one man sad is recorded. Just ask for a copy na lang po dayon. Okay? Very good. So let's now proceed with the next one. So ang next, Danny, is actually a continuation naman gyapon. Okay, so na let's remember this one, this code kaning declare strict types is equal to 1. Okay, ano, give it here. The strict declaration forces things to be used in an intended way. Now, for ano na sad, what they call this one? For, what they call this one? For default arguments, you have it here. This one is quite simple. If you notice, 'di ba, in forms, 'di ba, there are some scenarios where in forms are left without any input. That's why sometimes para bitaw dili madal or dili bitaw di na mag-error or di na malangay silbi ang process of getting the input from the user. Usually is ginabutangan nila default na lang dayon. For example, the programmer created a form that will not require the users to fill up everything, di ba? So, ang ginabuhat na lang din na dayon is that they provide a default argument value, okay? So, for example, kani siya, the developer or the programmer created a function with the name setHeight and provided the format of the argument value. Sabi niya, the function will only be utilized if an argument will be provided if the argument value is an integer. Ayan, is an integer. So after that one, this part of the code will be executed na dayon. So kani bitong part bitaw dani, this one is the argument variable man. So kaning value na provided within the argument variable, this one will become the default. Di ba kabalo man ta sa default, di ba? When you say default gali, kung wala kay nahatag or nabutang mo na siya dahil nang ibutang sa imuha dayon. So for this one, for example, if malimtan ni end user og hatag dadto nga value for that function, automatically ang motunga dayon is 50. Okay? So let's try this one. Okay. So you have it here. So gitawag niya si set height na 350, di ba? If you notice, si 350 gito nga. Dani sa ikaduha nga pagtawag niya sa function, si set height wala siya value or argument value na gihatag. So since wala man siya variable argument value na gihatag, automatic ang gitawag dayon is si default, si 50. Munang 50 ang gitunga dani. Okay? The rest dayon is provided man by the user, 135 and then 80 dayon. So let us remember na the input coming from the user supersedes the default value. Meaning, ay ragid mo tong si default value kung walay ihatag nga input si user. Okay? Munang gito nga dani is 50. So for example, butangan ni 100 gali ha. Ta ako ni butangan sa 100 dani. Ang may tabo dayon is okay. So again, kung ayan, 'di ba nawala si 50, nabutang si 100, 'di ba? Again, remember, the default value only works if there is no input coming from the user. So dani kay naghatag man ta or nagset man tag value for the variable, mo na nga na sila. Pero kung wala kay ibutang dana, automatic ang moto nga dayon is 50. Nganong 50 man sir? It's because of this one. Okay, tungo dani. Okay, question before I proceed with the next one. Yan. So kung walang question, please type this word in your meeting chat. Kana akong na-highlight. Sige daw, be. If you're really listening, I highlighted the word. Please type it in your in-call messages. Okay, you have Garcia, you have Buray, you have Balaba. Okay, very good. I think everyone has understood it already. Diba? It's quite simple. Let's make it as simple as possible para dito maglisod. Okay, now let's proceed with the next one. Medyo taas-taas ang discussion, but then it's worth it man sad. Kay mas masabtan po siya ninyo po dayon. So kani siya is already kani siya kay PHP functions returning values. When you say returning values gali, though there is a process involved inside the function, automatically ang basahon lang gyapon na value for the function is kung unsa ang gi-return niya. So for example kani siya, we created a function that adds two number with the name sum. Okay? We have explicitly indicated na the two variables should be integer. The second one, the first and then the second one should be integer. And then every time nga naihatag nga value for the two values, ay toward the two variables for this argument, ang buhaton dayon is that i-add silang duwa. Kaning duwa dayon will be the value of z, and then the value of the function will be returned based on the value ni z. So for example, Dani, naghatag sila or naghatag si user sa argument value na 5 o 10. So ang may tabo dayon is i-add si 5 o si 10 and then i-return siya as the value of the function represented by the variable z. Munang ang answer din Dani dapat should be 15. I hope it's 15, no? Okay. Yan, no? Diba? 5 plus 10 is equivalent to 15. So matisibas matingala mo, so ano ikaning 5 plus 10? The 5 plus 10 bitaw kani siya, it's kani siya, mo ni siya. Okay? Concatenation na lang dahil ang naitabo. So the sum of 5 and 10, so kani siya, mo nga function silbi, the sum of 5 and 10 is equivalent to 15. The sum of 7 and 13 is 20, and then the sum of 2 and 4 is 6. Okay? So mo returning values. Questions? Sige daw, be. Questions. So kung walang question, kindly type the highlighted phrase in your meeting chat or in the in-call messages. Kung may question, I will be very happy to answer it. How about the others? Okay, very good. Okay. I think klaro man siguro pod, no? Now let's go to the last one. I think this is the last one naman po siguro. So we have it here. Ayan. So PHP return type declaration. So what does it means? Meaning naapoy other kumbaga naapoy feature pud si function nga pwede ka magbuot nga ang imo bitang i-return nga value is based sa kung saan data type imong gi-declare nimo. So if you look at this example, this is a normal function. But because of this one, di ba? But because of this one, ang may tabo dayon is unsa man? Ang ipakita niya nga this one indicates the data type for the return value. Okay? So ang may tabo dani, pag i-add ni ang duwa ka argument, si argument A o argument B, kinahanglan ipakita nga ang ma-display nga answer is is an answer with decimal points. Okay? So for example, kani siya, we will add two numbers, 1.2 and 5.4. So dapat mahimo gyapon siyang 6.4. Okay? So nganong ginabutangan man ni siya og data types? There are times man gyud, di ba? There are times man gyud nga you would want to indicate nga this number or this format should be used on in this scenario. So naiuban nga whole numbers ang gusto, naiuban nga naay decimal points ang gusto, di ba? Especially pag money. So kana siya. So if I will try this one, if I will click this, okay? So wait muna. So if I will click that one, and then ato ipakita ang iyang ano. Ang moto nga is 6.4. Now look what will happen if I will type here int. Yeah. Ayan. Ngano nag-fatal error man siya. Sige daw de. Because ano? Because it is because we have declared man dani nga strict requirement. Kung ang imong gi-type nimo dani is a what you call this one is a if ang imong argument is in the format nga naka-float, dapat ang imo pod gyapon naka data type pod gyapon is float pod gyapon. Munang nag-error siya. So apos na ibalik sa ha. Yan, 6.4. Now let's try to have this one gali ha. Look what will happen. I hope it works. Yeah, let's try. Kasi mag-error gyapon kaya naka-float man ni siya. Ayan. Look what happens. So dani akong gikubian, di ba? Mudawat ko og float, di ba? Mudawat ko og float dani. Ayan. Mudawat ko og float nga mga mudawat ko og float nga pagka-display sa variable or sa value sa variable, but I will also present it in a manner nga dili siya naka-decimal point but rather naka-integer. So mo ni siya, di ba? So kung gusto nimo na siya i-change, pwede ra pod ka dinhi magbutang pod gyapon. Let's try to see if pwede ba siya maski wala ni siya ha. Let's just try it lang. Let's just try to experiment. Ayan, pwede ra gid ay. For example, i-float nato. I hope it works gyapon. So anything works, if anything works pero balag late og methodology pero we will arrive on the same answer, it's still okay. Okay? So kana siya. Pwede ka mag-declare sa data type din sa imong return nimo. Like gusto nimo i-return nga naka-decimal point, di ba? So kana siya imong ibutang nimo float. Gusto nimo nga whole number. Ibutang nimo nga integer na lang po dayon. Okay? So questions. Sige daw be, questions. Okay, medyo taas tong discussion karon but I hope it's ano. So kung walang question, please ask question. So kani mo man pangutana ka ganyan sa pikas nga block. Sir, how many functions can you have in a program? That will be dependent sa imuha. Just make sure lang yun nga you can when you create functions, it satisfies the characteristic of a function. Remember, a function should be used more than once or it should be repeatedly used in a program. Kung ang imong gusto buhaton is magpa-jimmy-jimmy lang ka sa imong code nimo and then it's not repeatedly used, then it's not a good practice. Okay? So ang purpose dani karon is for you to learn how to create functions and how to implement it. Okay? So you can declare as many functions as you would want provided na it is with relevance. Okay? Remember also na ang function dili siya mogana not unless the arguments set by the function is satisfied by the value na gi-input ni user. Okay? Another thing also, functions are what do you call this one? Functions will be data type restricted if not data type restricted, but will consider data types if you will explicitly declare it, di ba? So pag di nimo i-declare, ang buhaton nila ni PHP is identify niya ang data type sa variable based dadtong value na imong gihatag silbi, di ba? Like for example, tangtangon ako ning float and then variable lang kung ibutan lang dani lang. Automatically si PHP ang iyang basahon is of course katong value and then yan ang i-declare dayon nga okay, the variable ADI is a float kay 1.2 man ang gi-type ni user. Okay? Sige daw, may questions. If may question, you can turn on your microphone or you can type it in your in-call messages. Okay, kung walang question, please type float in your in-call messages. Float. Naay nag-ask sir if naay strict declaration for string. Pwede ra sad? Yes, naa gyapon. The strict declaration is also available in what you call this one, in string gyapon. But Jeezer, ang problema lang manggid sa string mangyud is that there are parts of the string that will be considered as character and then numerical, di ba? So I will really suggest nga you use the strict declaration if you are dealing with numbers. But I don't man sa nga kanang for numbers agad siya. Okay? Jeezer, did I answer your question? Please
Okay,
confirm.
okay, sir. Nawatanan
Okay.
mo to si
Thank you. Good question. Okay. So, I think there are no other questions man siguro. But before we leave muna, before I dismiss you guys, I'd like to I'd like to what do you call this one, discuss with you the upcoming days for SIA, okay? So I'll just stop the recording para dili siya ingon nga mag-log.